Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. Today we have a Space Marine on Space Marine battle, Iron Hands versus Space Wolves. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, so for today, I am bringing a total of 2,000 points on the dot of Space Wolves. So starting off with Santa himself on his sleigh, so Logan Grimnor on Storm Rider. I figured this is very iconic and very cool, so I might as well take it. As just he's a very tough guy, is a 2-up, 4-up, has tons of buffs. Really cool moves. And he can charge even if he has advanced. Yeah, really good. So he's a very good close combat-y guy. Then I have Arjak Rockfist, who decided not to render in at all, no matter what I do. And so he basically is a super tough, tanky character, because he has a 3-up invulnerable save. And yeah, and of course Space Wolves have their exploding 6s in Assault Doctrine. And he gives rerolls of 1 to wound, so we'll see how that goes. Then I have, for troops, I have 2 units of Intercessors, which are the backbone of the army, because they're doing the objectives. And then a giant unit of Blood Claws with their chain swords and such. And then I have a Wolf Pack leader who has essentially, Lightning Claws. And so a good strong melee unit here and there. Then we have onto the elites. So I have 2 packs of Wolfen. I figure that this is more of a melee-ish army, so I have 1 squad with Frost Claws. Now, these guys essentially are going to be hitting with Strength 6, AP -2, and can reroll failed wound rolls with these weapons. Very good, very nice, very strong melee killers, so I'm expecting a good amount from them. And then I have the same unit again, but with Thunderhammer and Storm Shields. So these guys, I'm playing both bits, the anti-infantry and the anti-tank kind of stuff, so I'm hoping to have a very good showing from these guys. And then I have a Venerable Dreadnought with the Axe and Shield, because it's cool. And yeah, pretty much this is a very melee army. And then I have Murder Fang, which I can only take 1 of. And he is a very powerful melee fighter. Many attacks, a lot of damage. So we'll see how he goes. And then finally, an interesting thing is these Fenrisian Wolves. Very cheap, so I could consider them objective holders. Like 35 points for 5, I think, or something like that. Actually, let me check. They are... Yeah, 35 points for 5. My largest squad costs 84, and so I have them in different amounts for different things. They can run and charge. They have a very good movement, and yeah, and they're not counted as infantry though. Yeah, they're beasts, so it's going to be a little challenging. And then finally, for heavy support, a unit of Long Fangs, which not have meltas. They actually have grav cannons, because there's no Space Wolf model for that. And so a unit of 5 grav cannons and 1 sergeant. And that is 2,000 points on the dot of Space Wolves.
Alright, you guys, so today I have 2,000 points of, I almost said Raven Guard, Iron Hands. And so Iron Hands, if you read their book, they're very much about heavy, slow-duty vehicles and tech marines and stuff like that. They're pretty cool. They're basically the Space Marine of the Space Marines of the Adeptus Mechanicus, because they have such close ties. So I wanted to try out I like trying all the little Space Marine chapter specific librarian powers. So I took a librarian, and so I have 3 spells, 3 psychic powers: Blessing of the Machine God, Plysteel Armor, and Reforge. So Blessing of the Machine God allows me to select a vehicle within 12 inches and add 1 to the hit roll or whatever it's shooting with, or even I guess melee as well. Plysteel Armor allows me to select an Iron Hands unit, so just across the board, and add 1 to its saving throw. And then Reforge, he basically takes on a slight Tech Marine slant and allows me to repair a vehicle for D3 lost wounds, which is pretty cool. Other than that, he's a Primaris Librarian. He is a Chief Librarian, so that way he could take the 3 powers and I believe use 2 of them, or at least try to use 2 of them. So he'll definitely take more of a support role, He's still a Space Marine character, so he's not too shabby in combat. Not great, but you know. But so I thought that would be kind of cool. His powers are actually relatively useful, it actually seems like. Then moving on, I have Iron Father Pharaoh. So the only unique character from the Iron Hands book. He is a what is it? Like the chapter master, but for Tech Marine. It's the master of the forge. There it is. He also has Gravis armor, so he's actually toughness 5. He's got 7 wounds, which is a lot of wounds. 5 attacks, so he's quite good. He's got Harrow Hand, which is, I guess, a relic power axe thing. So +3 strength, -2 damage. He's got a heavy bolter just sitting on his shoulder because why not? He also has uniquely a Signum Array, so the only other person that has one that I know of is in the Imperial Fists, which gives +1 to attack, or to hit with shooting to a nearby unit, so it's 3 inches. Then he has Rites of Tempering, so he gives friendly Iron Hand units a 5-up invuln save while they're within 6 inches of him, which is kind of crazy. He has his own 5-up Feel No Pain, and then he, being a Tech Marine, can heal 3 wounds on a vehicle. His can only be done. So each model can only be repaired. Okay, yeah. So he's just a really buffed out Tech Marine, but being a unique character. Blah blah blah. So rolling into the regular Tech Marine, who is my Warlord, by the way. He has. Oh, just jumped. A Warlord trait and a relic. So obviously he can repair multiple times. He's not able to take Master of the Forge because Pharaoh's is, and you can only have 1 per list. But his trying to find his Warlord trait. I'm not seeing it. It's probably this Adept of the Omnissiah. No, that's just the repair. At the end of your movement phase, unless this Warlord is a technical, you can repair 1 friendly Iron Hands vehicle model. Yeah, anyway, so his relic, at least, is that he reduces damage for 1 vehicle as long as he's within 3 inches of it by 1. So he has a damage debuff on that, so he can pick 1 vehicle and help it live, essentially, on top of repairing it. Yeah, I'm not actually seeing his Warlord trait.
You won't see it on here.
Yeah, that's weird. I'll go back into that. All right, here, let me look really quick. What is it? It is... Oh, I actually don't see it. Special War Gear, the Ironstone. Oh, you know what? I didn't give him the Warlord trait, that's why. What did I give it to? That's not important. I probably didn't give him one. Anyway, moving on from HQs, I have 3 troops, which are just regular intercessors. Infantry are not really the thing for Iron Hands, although they could have some really tough ones if I had gone into it, like, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting all the units names. It's not important. Anyway, but so yeah, they're just regular squads. They have the bolt rifles, so they're rapid fire. I did it because they have a little bit of AP on them. So when the assault or the tactical doctrine comes around, Armor of Contempt won't just nullify it because it would be -2. But anyway, so yeah, so that's just, they're just for objectives and whatever, what have you. Now rolling on to elites, this is where it starts to get more problematic for him, I'm hoping. So I have 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, one with the Macroplasma Incinerator and the other with the Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon. So I didn't really know what I was going to be facing, so I was like, you know, have a mix between really heavy firepower and then just a lot of shots. And so both of the Redemptors are there for that. Then I also have a Venerable Dreadnought. I know they're kind of out of favor, but I like them. And so he has the twin las cannon and a close combat weapon, a nice mix of stuff. And then interestingly, playing into the Iron Hand stuff, my Ironclad Dreadnought. Now I don't see a lot of people take them, but they are a rude dreadnought. Like, they hit like a ton of bricks. Iron Hands can make a vehicle have the character rule. I think it's just a vehicle, or it might just be dreadnoughts. I can't remember. Oh no, it's a dreadnought. So I can I turn my Ironclad into a character. which is pretty cool. It was a command point. So what it does is it gives him an extra attack and an extra leadership, which it doesn't show in his. It doesn't reflect here. But then what I did later, after I made the list a couple days ago, I came back in and I tweaked it a little bit. So I ended up giving him a warlord trait as well, which was Sword of the Imperium, which when he charges, is charged, or heroically intervenes, gives him an additional +1 attack and strength. Not that he needs that, but the attack is nice. So he'll have about 7 attacks on the charge, which is super cool, I think. Anyway, and so yeah, so that's pretty cool rule on their end. And then moving into the heavy supports, so this is where we get into the vehicles. So I have the Gladiator Valiant. Now this one has 2 multi-meltas, which is a lot of multi-melta shots, and a twin Las Talon, which is heavy 4, strength 9, -3, and then d6 damage, and it's a hover tank, so that's pretty cool. And so it's just really kind of heavy vehicle hunter. And then on his flip side is the Gladiator Reaper. Now this one has 2 Tempest Bolters, which are rapid fire 4, AP -1, bolter, so it's strength 4, single damage. But he also has twin heavy onslaught Gatling cannon, which is heavy 24, strength 6 -1, so a real anti-infantry. Just gonna mow stuff over, hopefully. It's got only AP 1 though, so we'll see. And then in the middle is the Repulsor Executioner. Now these guys are expensive, but they are loaded to the teeth with guns. I'm not going to go over all of them, but he does have Aquilin Optics, so anytime he makes an attack with his Heavy Laser Destroyer, which is not what I took the Macroplasma Incinerator, he gets +1 to his hit rollout for that gun specifically. And so it's going to be a lot of kind of like a Dreadnought Castle and a lot of just really heavy shooting, and then hopefully the Dreadnoughts will be able to take on his melee because he has Space Wolves. And that is 2,000 points of Iron Hands.
Alright, so we rolled for the mission, and it is Recover the Relics, 1-1. And so the mission is Take and Hold, Control 1, Control 2, Control More. And the secondary is Break Them Body and Soul. At the end of each battle round, each player scores 1 victory point for each enemy unit that was destroyed in the battle round, to a maximum of 3 per battle round. And in the mission, you only receive your CP at the start of your turn if you control an objective in no man's land or your opponent's. But if you control your opponent's deployment zone marker, you get an additional 1. So it's going to be actually pretty interesting. It's going to be very offensive and in each other's faces. Alright, so for setting up terrain, it was interesting. So he's a shooting army, I'm a melee army with a little bit of support shooting. And so for me, the idea was to get a good amount of cover where I could hide my guys where they wouldn't be shot to death. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So basically, so I can move up, control a good amount of the board, and lash out from there in melee. And that was essentially my idea, to block line of sight and be able to move through things. So that's what I was thinking in building my army for.
Yeah, so essentially, being a shooty army, I mean, I guess I have dreadnoughts that are melee, but I couldn't afford to not be able to see him, so I didn't use any like buildings except for one in the back. And so I was like, I just want to have direct open fire spots, even if there's a little bit of light cover or whatever. So I went with just a bunch of these little floor pieces that'll help. That way I can still see him no matter where he is in the middle of the field, and hopefully mow him down. So yeah, that was the idea. We'll see how well that plays out for me, because it's a lot of slowing terrain, and I don't have the speediest of units. So
Alright then, so for secondaries, for the Space Wolves, first is Warrior Pride, which I think is incredibly simple and good to do. All I have to do is have 2 successful charges, or end my turn with an engagement have 2 of my units with an engagement range of any enemy units, and I get 3 points. That's it. So that's easy. Shock Tactics. So this is the Space Marine one. Basically, I just have to control 1 or more objective markers that were controlled by my opponent. So super aggressive. It fits the army right now. Yeah. and then raise the banners high because I got nothing else. This is one thing I've noticed about Nephilim, is that it really forces you to choose from your own book, which adds some interesting diversity into the tactics of the game. But
I enjoy it.
I would prefer a few more secondaries, because this has always been a very difficult part of the game, choosing your secondaries.
Yeah, well, I think they also combined a couple of secondaries, or because they used to have 3 in each category, and then they went to 2.
Yeah.
Which I guess kind of makes sense. Like the vehicle one, they had Titanic units separate, and then so that was a whole. But now they're, I don't know. I do like the book ones though. So, namely, my Iron Hands one, Cold Fury, because even the 8th edition Space Marine books got one, and so those I've actually enjoyed them. So this one, Iron Hands, I can get up to a maximum of 4 points a turn. So each one of these categories is 1 point. 1 or more Iron Hand vehicle units from your army are wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. That one might take a little bit. 1 or more Iron Hand vehicle units from your army are wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. A little easier. 1 or more enemy units were destroyed by ranged attacks by an Iron Hand vehicle unit, or a vehicle killed someone in combat. And so each one of those is 1 point for me. 2 of them are sitting around. The other 2 are killing things. We'll see how we go. And this is this battle round or end of my turn? Okay, that's pretty cool. Nephilim data is Nephilim data. I have some infantry. We'll see how we go. And then psychic interrogation. I couldn't think of anything to do for the third one. He doesn't have enough characters for assassination. Doesn't have enough vehicles for bring it down. The Iron Hands one is in the No Mercy, No Respite, so I couldn't take no prisoners or anything like that. So, Psychic Interrogation, I basically, one of my spells is taken up by rolling a 4 within 24 inches of a character. Apparently I also get a command point for it at the end of the phase. But yeah, and then it's 3 points. So my librarian will stay dangerously close to his characters. I don't know how happy I am about that, but is the only other one left I could have. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens.
Well, deployment was interesting. Space Wolves won the roll-off, and they got to choose which side, which obviously the one with tons of cover, and they deployed first. So overall, the idea was this. My opponent is a heavily shooty army. I realized that after starting deployment, that even though I covered the base objectives, I have to run across a field of death to get to him, and so it is unlikely I will be able to. So basically I did everything I could to place all my guys safely behind cover and in places where they can move. So a lot of my guys have huge movement phases. So the first turn, maybe 2, would be to flood the places where the objectives are or behind the cover to get closer. So all my big units, Blood Claws, Wolves, some of the Wolfen and stuff, are out of the range, and he would have to move very far forward to get into range. And that pretty much was my idea of like trying to save as many as I could and trying to move up from cover to cover. But even though I deploy a lot of my guys very far back, it's because they have very long distances that they can move. And I have my character Arjak Rockfist in reserves to deep strike because he's a Terminator, and it probably is the best thing he can do. And yeah, that was the entirety of my idea. Stay behind cover and make sure my guys are safe and just try to see what happens. So.
Yeah, so I kind of had a similar one where being shooty is like, okay, well, I need to be able to shoot at least once. And I was like, there are some things I need to sit on some of the objectives, so in no man's land, so it's a slight danger. But so I kind of tried to, it was kind of hard because I was like, I don't usually do well with castles because I usually forget abilities and buffs, or I pair the wrong units together. But so I was like, okay, well, I need a dreadnought castle, which is essentially multiple dreadnoughts just chilling out together, and I put both of my tech marines there to keep them alive, and they're also next to the repulsor, which is the most expensive thing in my army easily, and then the gladiator valiant, which has some heavy shots, and then I put my librarian that has some healing and just kind of more army buffs down at the bottom, or I guess it's at the top for you guys. Because I don't know, essentially. But yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to get some shooting off, and then my dreadnoughts will be able to survive and hold off long enough to do something. Yeah, I don't know.
Alright, so to decide who goes first, honestly, the way the army is, I need to go second. As if I put my guys right, I should be safe from a lot of your stuff, but I need to get in close. So what I'm thinking is that you need to go first to move up so I can be closer so I can hit you. That's basically it. It's better in my favor if you go first. I'm safe from a lot of your shooting. You have almost no targets, so you have to move forward to make something, or even to better turtle against me. So I think if I go first, it's just going to be me moving into cover and doing much. But if you go first, it'll probably be better for me in the end, and also claiming objectives at the end of the fifth turn may be useful. So that's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I am thinking the exact same thing, but for obviously all the opposite reasons. If I go second, then you move up, or at least move something that I can shoot. And so I think if I end up going first, it's gonna be a real boring turn. I'm gonna move this guy 1 inch over here, and so yeah. Technically, I guess it would allow me to do some positioning, and maybe better be able to respond to some stuff. But honestly, for the most part, that's really it. Yeah, I want to go second just because it should give me more targets, but going first would allow me some like kind of movement buffs to kind of sort myself before everything gets crazy. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say.
All right then.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well.
Come on.
Interesting. Well. I guess we'll see how we go.
Space Wolves turn 1. Alright, so it's really a difficult thing to say. I just basically moved my entire army up, but I find it's really difficult to move to cover. A lot of my guys are a lot weaker, a lot softer. Yeah, I'm not sure really what to do. Not a lot of places to move. I have my intercessors on both sides do raise the banners on each objective, and the Longfanes did raise the banners. I didn't really see anything that they could do. And yeah, and that's about it. Yeah. Alright, so for points, I got nothing. Recovered the relics. I haven't really done anything. I haven't killed anything, but I have taken the board essentially. Yeah, and I got 3 raise the banners going up, so that'll build dividends. We'll see how the next turn goes.
All right, you guys. So movement, there was a lot of things I was really iffy on, and so because I don't want to get charged, but at the same time, to get command points and to get secondary points, I need to play somewhat aggressively, and so I made some choices, and I don't know if they're gonna do well for me, but here we are. So I moved my Dreadnought Castle up towards the top, and the Tech Marines followed along with it. In the command phase, Pharos gave the Repulsor Executioner the Signum Array, because it doesn't specify, it just says 1 unit. And so he has +1 to hit, and I found this nifty little marker, so that was cool. And then my Gladiator Reaper moved down from his spot near the middle, because it would seem that there was a lot of bad things pulling up on the other side of him. So I figured some fire support will be nice. What the?
I pressed tab. I don't know what's happening.
A nerd. My intercessors at the bottom climbed up the wall, but they're not the ones doing Nephilim data. I figured this might be the only chance for this bottom corner based off of everything on the other side. So they're going to do it. And if they're still alive, they can move up on the next turn and take the objective. Obviously, I'm sitting on my home objective. But so my tanks from the bottom kind of moved towards the middle. My dreadnoughts followed the bottom wall. My ironclad did not move. If he's going to try and charge him, he's going to have to reach for it this turn. He might still get in combat just because of what's across from him, but it won't be easy for him. And that is my goal with that. And then hopefully on the next... Anyway, not important. So I did move my Repulsor Executioner into the middle for my Iron Hand secondary. Now I know that means that for a fact that the Fenrisian Wolves can easily charge him. However, Iron Hands have a stratagem that gives me 4-up Overwatch, and he has a lot of guns, so I'm hoping that that kind of mitigates it a little bit. And yeah, that was my movement, I think. Alright, you guys, so for my Psychic phase, I started off with attempting a Psychic action. I rolled a 4 right on the dot, which is what it needed, so he used some army ability to try and dispel it. He rolled a 3, which was hilarious. And
I spent a CP to re-roll it.
Yep. Yeah, and then it went off. So that action went away. And then I used Blessing of the Machine God to give my Gladiator Reaper +1 to hit, because it is time to go in on shooting. And that was it. That was my Psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, as long as it took, there wasn't actually a whole lot necessarily that happened. So I started off with my Gladiator Reaper, and he did a split fire, so his Icarus rocket pod shot at his Venerable Dreadnought up front with the shield. The shields actually blocked the one wound that went through, so nothing happened there. And then he shot his Tempest Bolter and Twin Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon at the Wolfen, and I think I killed 4? Yeah, 4. Which is not bad. It's 8 damage. And then that's all that happened there. Moving on to my Repulsor Executioner, he basically unloaded everything at the only thing he could see, which was his Blood Claws. And I did kill, it looks like 7 of them. So not bad. Not the greatest shooting for everything that it has. But yeah. And then I went up to the Redemptor Dreadnought with the Onslaught Gatling Cannon, because he could see the tail end of his little wolf triangle that he made. But the only one, so we had a question for you guys, actually, because he could see them, and the closest unit was within 24. The closest model was within 24, but the closest model he could see was like 25 inches. So I only shot with one gun. So I don't really know what the rule is for that. If you guys know, feel free to let us know down in the comments. But yeah, and so he shot, and out of the 12, 5 went through at -2, which knocked off just 5 wolves. And that was my shooting phase. All right, you guys. So for my points, I have got 1 point for secondary. And that is because my Repulsor Executioner is within 6 inches of the center. I wasn't able to kill any units, which would have given me the Cold Fury secondary, as well as recover the relic. And he blocked my Psychic Interrogation, so that didn't go through either. And Nephilim data, because I have squads of 5 and they're a troop, it means that when I roll to see if Nephilim data succeeds, I need a 4 or less, and I rolled a 5, so it actually failed. And so not great. Yeah, so we'll see.
Alright, so I decided to be more adventurous. The entire top basically shuffled out and ran. I also realized that Logan actually doesn't fly. He's actually just being dragged as a beast. So if I would have known, I figured that out afterwards, and so I had to move the Dreadnoughts out first. At the first phase, I had him run over the Long Fangs because I thought he could fly, but if I knew that then, I would have just had them move first before doing their stuff. So in the end, it really doesn't mess any of the gameplay. I would just shuffle something over. So just FYI, but that's how I had him fly over the first time. But now I know he's being dragged. So he ran forward, the Wolfens are behind him, the Venerable Dreadnought and Murderfang is behind him. I reshuffled my Blood Claws into the main objective there. My Long Fangs stepped out. I'm just going to have to start risking things. I can't sit back. I have to try and survive and do what I can. And the Wolfen ran out. Well, not really ran, they moved out, so they will try to see if they can be within range. And yeah, so we're gonna see how this goes. It's very risky right now. Alright everyone, so in the shooting phase for the Space Wolves, I had my Long Fangs target the intercessors that he had that was on top of the plinth, or basically what we use as the crates and stuff. So essentially what happened is they had Signum, because of the Sergeant, and he had one of the guys had hit on a 2-up, but because they moved, it's -1 to hit. So he's hitting on 3s, so he fired, did some wounds, but my opponent needed to make 5-ups, and then he had Feel No Pains, which he made a lot of them. And then the whole squad fired, killed off everyone but one guy with 1 wound, and then I used Armored Cherubim to allow, once per game, one guy to shoot a second time, so I had the guy with the 2-up shooting a second time, and that wiped out the squad. So that was a very good strategic thing. I wiped him off that objective. Very useful. Alright, now for the most important charge phase. So Logan Grimnar up first to charge the Ironclad Dreadnought, and he rolled double 1s. So I had to spend the reroll on him, and he successfully made it. Then I had the Wolfen charge the Repulsor, and they made it on an 11. And then he overwatched. Now the Iron Hands apparently have a stratagem they can do in addition to their overwatch that gives them to hit on 4-ups. And so with his super heavy shooty tank overwatching on 4-ups, he successfully, after a lot of rolling, killed 3 Wolfen, because these are the guys with the Thunderhammer and Storm Shields. And so they were able to tank a lot. That 4-up invulnerable save came really handy. And then at the very end, Arjak Rockfist, who deep strike behind, charged the Tech Marine. He rolled a 6, he needed to roll another 3, and then he rolled a 1. And that was the charge phase. Fight phase. It was a pretty interesting fight phase. So Logan Grimnar swung first. He had 6 attacks on the charge. 1 missed, and I decided, because things were very desperate, I spent 1 CP to re-roll the hit. And it went through, and then he did 5 wounds. Then my opponent rolled to save, and he failed all of them. And that put him at exactly taking 10 wounds, because he had -1 damage. And so my opponent rolled Feel No Pain saves. He made 1-6. He needed to make 3. So the Ironclad Dreadnought died straight out. And then the Wolfen swung. Yeah, the Wolfen swung against the Repulsor. So apparently the Sergeant has Ice Claws, and I can't seem to change it, at least as far as I understand, according to Yellowscribe. And so all my attacks swung, and I did a total of 14 wounds to him, because the Wolfen, each of them will have 4 attacks on the charge, and they have Assault Doctrine always, and with Savage Fury, which is the Space Wolves' specialty when they're in Assault Doctrine, they get exploding 6s. So, hitting on 4s with Thunder Hammers, I was able to do 14 wounds in its entirety. And then my Wolfpack leader swung and was able to do 1 wound to it. If he would have done 1 more, it would have died. And then morale phase, because the 3 I lost, I rolled for my morale test and failed that, and 2 Wolfen just fled, which is so sad. That's disappointing. If I would have replaced him from one of the guys who got shot by Overwatch, I probably would have killed it. And yeah, and his Repulsor Executioner swung back, got 3 hits, or no, 3 swings, 1 hit, and rolled a 1 to wound. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I actually held 1, held 2, and held more because he wasn't able to get all 3 of the of his command, or of his objectives in his turn, so I was able to easily have more at the start of mine. I had Raise the Banners High, finally came in, and so I got 3, and I will get another 3 next turn hopefully. Warrior Pride, I successfully got that because 2 of my guys charged, 2 of them made it in successfully, so Warrior Pride right there. Shock Tactics, I did not take anything from him, so. And then Recover the Relics, I did kill 1 enemy unit, so I got a point from there. And okay, this turn turned out much better, but we'll see, because now so much of my guys are out in the open, he could easily do a massive mag dump onto a lot of my troops, so we'll see what happens now.
Alright, you guys, so based off of that very saddening melee phase with the stupid Ironclad, couldn't make a single save. I have to kind of readjust a little bit. Now, technically, we both committed to opposite sides, so it's not necessarily a surprise what's happening. But what that does mean is that my dreadnoughts now have to kind of swoop around and kind of make up for it while I try and live on the other side. So my dreadnought castle moved forward and started to fan out and aim for sitting on objectives. My repulsor executioner left combat. Oh wait, no, I never actually fully decided what I was gonna do with that.
Okay, move on.
Okay, anyway, he might actually end up staying in. No, he'll stay out. That's fine. Anyway, my librarian moved up closer to the repulsor executioner. My gladiator reaper moved farther away from Grimnar. My intercessors moved onto the wall and started doing Neckman data. And so essentially the bottom part of my army is starting to move over and around while the top part is starting to kind of funnel backwards a little bit. And we'll see how that goes for me. Alright, you guys, so for my psychic phase, it was pretty simple. Secondary, so on Logan Grimnar, I did it, and because it was equal to or beating his leadership, I was able to get a command point out of it from the psychic interrogation rules, or at least unless I missed something. But and then he gave +1 to hit on the Gladiator Reaper. I really kind of didn't know he's too far to do the healing, which I didn't realize it had such a short range of 3 inches. Otherwise, I probably would have put him somewhere else, but that's not important. And then I couldn't decide between +1 save or +1 to shoot, so I just gave +1 to shoot because hopefully that means he won't have to need his save. But yeah, so that was that. Pretty short psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so this was a super underwhelming shooting phase. First off, I started shooting at Arjak Rockfist with my Gladiator Valiant. And it killed him.
Which is funny because that was the anti-vehicle one. It had all the high AP, but he had a 3-up invulnerable save, but he could not make 3-ups at all. Kept rolling 1s and 2s.
The Valiant has 4 multi-meltas and 4 las cannon shots, so he just and a rocket pod. But
well, he tanked the meltas.
He just got melted. Yeah. Yeah, I guess he did. He took 2 somewhere. Oh, it was the rocket pod. It was the las cannons that got him. Mm-hmm. Or las talons, technically, but whatever. And then basically the rest of my entire bottom shot at his Wolfen, for better or worse. Leaving just my Gladiator Reaper to shoot at Logan Grimnar, which did 1 damage.
Yes.
So not good. Yeah, really not good. Alright, so I had a long odds charge. I wasn't really expecting it to work, and so I needed at least a 9 just to get in base to base through at the front of the building. But to get around, I would need like a 10 or 11, something ridiculous. Which I rolled an 8, and so I was like, yeah, I don't care enough to use points to try and reroll it because it wasn't like a super serious charge. And that was my charge phase, and the rest of my turn. Alright, you guys, so for points, I was sitting on 1 primary, or 1 objective, so I got 4 points in my primary. And then recover the relics, I wiped 2 units off, his character and the Wolfen, and so I got 2 points on the recover the relics, which also lent me 1 point in my Cold Fury, so I shot 1 unit off, and that gave me a point, and then my tank is still in the middle, so that got me another point. And then I was successfully able to do Nephilim data this time, so I have 1 thing for that. Technically right now that's still 0 points for me. I have to get at least 2. And then Psychic Interrogation went off, giving me 3 points there. So actually not bad on secondaries, but obviously primaries I am a little bit behind here.
Alright, so for movement, I decided to start going all in. Logan Grimnar moved towards the Gladiator Reaper and the Primaris Librarian. The Venerable Dreadnought moved southwards. Murder Fang was moving towards the Repulsor, but then I decided to reroute him over to be on the objective. The Wolfen ran and got onto the objective, just one of them touching. The Blood Claws, I decided, were just wasting their time there, so they ran forward. The Long Fangs moved forward to get into range of more targets. And then the Fenrisian wolves ran out to get somewhere, maybe do something. And my intercessors all shuffle around the green squad on the bottom to move further away from the Redemptor in case of charges. And then the top squad of intercessors moved out to get line of sight on stuff. Alright, so for the shooting phase, Logan Grimnar fired at the Primaris Librarian and didn't do anything. Then the Murder Fang, the Murder Fang fired at the intercessors he was right next to with his heavy flamer and did 1 wound. And then his Stormbolter shot and did nothing, because he has Ballistic Skill 5 apparently. Then the Venerable Dreadnought shot at them and did absolutely nothing. He keeps rolling 6s for his saves. And then I had my squad of Longfangs target his Venerable Dreadnought on the objective, and I spent a CP for the strat Keen Senses, which is Space Wolves, which is basically they ignore any and all modifiers to their ballistic skill and stuff. So no cover, none of that, their movement won't bother them. I had the Sergeant give one of the Longfangs a 2-up to shoot, and after all their shooting, they did a total of 2 wounds to him. They did 3, but he has -1 damage, so that turned to 1 each, and then he rolled a 6-up Feel No Pain, so that turned to 2. So that was very disappointing, and that was a pretty bad shooting phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, Logan Grimnar did a triple charge, the Gladiator Reaper, the Primaris Librarian, and the Intercessors because they're right there, and he would have to be in contact with them if he wanted to charge the Librarian as well, so I multi-charged all 3, and I successfully made it in. However, the hitboxes for the model is weird, and so, like, looking down, straight down, he can fit there, but he keeps flopping over, so what can you do? Then, my Venerable Dreadnought charged his Repulsor Executioner in the middle, and he made the charge on a 12. And then the Repulsor Executioner, he spent 2 CP to Overwatch on 4-ups, and he did a total of 5 wounds, bringing the Venerable Dreadnought down to 3. It's ridiculous. And the Murder Fang charged the Intercessors on the objective up top as well, and he made it in, obviously. And then the Fenrisian Wolves on the bottom charged the Redemptor Dreadnought to stall it, and they made it in. And that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the fight phase, Logan Grimnar went first, and he swung 6 attacks onto the Gladiator Reaper. But a lot of them didn't, well, he wasn't able to do much. Some of them just failed to get through, and I only did 6 wounds to it. It could have died outright, but he saved many of them. And then the Wolves on the Logan Grimnar Stormrider thing with 6 attacks swung on the Primaris Librarian, and he took 5 wounds, and he saved 1 of them, which means he's alive by 1 wound. And then the massive disappointment, the Murder Fang swung at the 5 Intercessors with his 8 attacks, by the way, and he rerolled to wounds, by the way, and successfully only killed 2 or 3 of the guys. So, that was disappointing. Yeah. And then the Venerable Dreadnought swung on the vehicle and just killed it outright, and then consolidated towards the next vehicle. And yeah, that was my swings. And then my Wolves swung on his Redemptor Dreadnought on the bottom and did 1 wound. And then he swung back and wiped out 5 of them, just outright. And then he swung back on my Logan Grimnar with his Librarian and stuff. The vehicle didn't do anything. With his Librarian, it did 3 wounds to Logan Grimnar. And then Murder Fang didn't get hurt at all from the Intercessor swinging back. And that was the fight phase. There was 2 morale tests, one for my Wolves, which they failed, and they're all gone. And then his Intercessors up top took a morale phase, but they're fine. Alright, so for points, I controlled 1, controlled 2. I did not control more. And then Warrior Pride, I had 2 successful charges minimum, or 2 guys in engagement range. Shock Tactics, I have not taken anything from him. I tied him on the objective up top, but I have not taken it. And Raise the Banner High, still paying those dividends. And yeah, and I'm being pushed ahead right now.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my Dreadnoughts have started to move up. My Venerable Dreadnought is moving closer to the middle of the table, I guess, technically. My Redemptors are moving closer into his back end. They should actually be in his deployment zone soon, or at least one of them will. And then my Gladiator Valiant gave itself some breathing room between it and the Venerable Dreadnought. Not that I don't think it'll survive this turn, but just in case, it also gives him room between him and like Murder Fang and the other kind of bigger boys. And then my intercessor sergeant, or intercessors, the full squad, well, the 5 squad, moved up a little bit. Again, just moving back, as did the Gladiator Reaper. He ran out of combat. My intercessors up at the top also left combat, leaving Murderfang out of combat. My librarian stayed in, predominantly because if he were to leave, which he wouldn't survive more than a turn anyway, he would not be able to do psychic powers. So that is the idea there. And maybe he can, I don't know, do something in his final moments. But yeah, so just kind of repositioning, because most of his combat stuff is actually on one side of the table now. So if I can kind of lean back and shoot the important stuff off, then I might be okay still. Maybe. We'll see. But yes, that's my movement phase. Alright, you guys, for my psychic phase, I did the psychic action and it went off, and I couldn't decide between smite or something helpful to me. So I ended up casting Plysteel Armor on the librarian, which failed, and that was it. That was my psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, a little bit happened. My Redemptor Dreadnought with the Onslaught Gatling Cannon shot at his dogs, the Fenrisian Wolves, and killed all of them. Then the other Redemptor with the Macroplasma shot at his Long Fangs, killing 3? Yeah, 3 of them. And then my Venerable Dreadnought and Ironfather Pharos and Intercessor shot at the Venerable Dreadnought, taking him down to 1 wound. So they only did 2 damage together, because of that 4-up invuln is quite handy for him. And then I was like, well, it's gamble time. So my Gladiator Valiant, I split its fire. So the Rocket Pod and the Multi-Meltas, of which he has 4 shots, so he has 2 Multi-Meltas, so 4 shots, shot at the Venerable Dreadnought, and he either saved it all, or that was it. He used a command point reroll, and saved the last one that would have gone through, killing him. And then the Twin Las Talons shot at Murderfang, being the -3. He saved, so 4 went through, so all 4 hit and wounded. But he saved 2 with his 5-up, and then the other 2 only did 6 damage on the 2d6. So I guess that's half. So that's, I don't know if that's statistical or not, but whatever. So he's down to 2 wounds, and that was my shooting phase. So kind of good, kind of not. Yeah. Alright, you guys, so for charges, my Redemptor Dreadnought with the Onslaught Cannons charged into his Intercessors, and he got in. He rolled an 11. He only needed a 7, but he got very in. And so hopefully he will just beat them all to death. We will see. And then Ironfather Pharos charged the Venerable Dreadnought. It's kind of risky because of the damage output of Dreadnoughts, but you know, because that 4-up invuln he might save. So I don't know. Anyway, so he charged, and both my charges were successful. So no one can interrupt, no one can reroll anything. So it'll be just a straight, honest, old-fashioned beatdown. Alright, you guys. So for combat, I started with Ironfather Pharos, and he killed the Dreadnought. So I started with his servo arm because I was like, oh, that might do it. I did not, because it rolled a 1 to wound, or you rolled a save or something. I don't remember now. But then his axe swung. Only 2 went through, which was not promising, but he actually failed both of those saves, and he was able to kill it. So that was nice. He's out in the open, but whatever. And then my Redemptor Dreadnought swung with 5 attacks. 3 went through, just squishing 3 of them. And then when they swung back, they actually did 1 damage back, which was kind of pathetic, but whatever. And then, to no one's surprise, Logan Grimnar killed the Librarian. So that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so for points here, I had 2 primaries, so that's 8 points. I killed 2 units, so for the mission secondary, that's 2 points. And then for Cold Fury, I got 2 points. I almost had 3, but my Dreadnought is not wholly within his deployment zone, so that was a miss. But I killed 1 from combat and 1 from shooting, so that's 2 points by vehicle. And then Nephilim data I didn't get, and then Psychic Interrogation I got, so I got 3 points. So I'm still doing okay points-wise. I guess this next turn, like what he does in his turn, will determine kind of where the rest of it goes. But yeah, so that was not bad.
Alright, so for the movement phase, well, first command phase, Logan Grimnar gave Chapter Master rerolls to the Blood Claws because of his 9-inch aura. Logan Grimnar moved up to intercept the Reaper. Murderfang and Blood Claws moved south. My Long Fangs shuffled a bit, and my Wolfen moved in to take over the objective. Alright, so for the shooting phase, a few things happened. The Long Fangs fired at the Venerable Dreadnought, did 1 wound to it. The Stalkers, or Intercessors up top, fired their Stalker Bolters at his Intercessors at the top objective, and successfully killed 1. Then Murderfang fired at Pharos with his Heavy Flamer, and Stormbolter did nothing. The Blood Claws fired their guns and successfully did 2 wounds to him. Then Logan Grimnar fired at his squad of Intercessors that's next to his home objective, and they did nothing. And that was my shooting phase. Alright, so for charges, Logan Grimnar charged tank on his main objective, took it. Then Murderfang charged his Ironfather Pharos, which has reroll to charges naturally, made it in. Blood Claws tried to charge the Ironfather, failed. Then rerolled that, failed. Then the Wolfen up top charged that 1 Intercessor and made it in. Alright, so at the beginning of the turn, I controlled 1, controlled 2, but I did not control more. At the end of the turn, killed off 2 of his units, so I got 2 points to recover the relics. My opponent killed 1, so he gets an extra point there. Warrior Pride, I had 2 successful charges, or 2 people at the end of the turn in engagement range, or 2 units, and I got an extra 3. Shock Tactics, I finally took an objective from my opponent, so I got 3 points. And raised the banners high at the beginning, at the command phase. I did technically so he has to take the objective away from me. And so in the command phase, the fight phase did not happen yet, so he did not take it away from me. So I still got a full 3 banners there. And so, yes, doing pretty good. Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
All right, you guys. So for this round, I moved. So no, yeah. So my Redemptor with the Onslaught cannons left the objective and moved closer to his back objective. So I should be able to actually take that from him this round, because they're not objective secured, I believe. The wolves.
No, not
so
the
hopefully
wolves.
I'll be able to do that. And neither are his Long Fangs, I believe. So even if they move back around, he should still be able to hold it, or something. I don't know. Then my other Redemptor Dreadnought moved to take the objective that he was on, or that the other one was on, and still maintaining a pretty full field of fire, because there's just a lot sitting out there. My Redemptor Dreadnought, or my Venerable Dreadnought, moved 6 inches around the middle, and my Tech Marine moved close enough to heal him, so within 3 inches. My Intercessors stepped back to be within 6 inches of this zone so they could do Nephilim data. And my full wound Valiant moved around just enough to get a good old look at Logan Grimnar. So a lot of kind of important moves, but the shooting phase will be very important here. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, this was probably the worst shooting phase in a very long time. The Gladiator Valiant shot everything into Logan Grimnar, and it did nothing. The Venerable Dreadnought, the Redemptor Dreadnought with the Macroplasma shot at Murderfang, and they did nothing. Oh no, they did 1 damage. And then the Redemptor Dreadnought shot at his Blood Claws and did 0 damage. So a whole lot of garbage. So yeah, that was it. That was a really crappy phase. Alright, you guys, so for the charge phase, my Redemptor Dreadnought charged his Fenrisian Wolves. Considering he was within an inch, he made it. My Venerable Dreadnought charged his Blood Claws, and he made it. He rolled an 8, so he needed either a 6 or a 7, or a 7 or 8 or something, but he rolled an 8, so he got in. And then my Tech Marine is going to try and finish off freaking Murder Fang, my Warlord. And so he rolled a 9. He needed an 8, so he got in. So my charges all went off. Hopefully the combat phase will go just as smoothly. So for combat, I swung first with my Tech Marine, and he was just barely able to kill Murder Fang, which was super annoying. But that is what it is. The Redemptor Dreadnought swung and missed horribly. He killed one wolf. And that was it. I think he took 1 wound back, maybe not.
Yes.
I don't know.
Or something like that, yeah.
And then the Venerable Dreadnought swung, he killed 4. And then they swung back and they did 4. So it was actually technically not necessarily an even trade, but anyway, and that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I had 2 on the primary, so that's 8. I was able to get 1 on Recover the Relics, because I killed Murder Fang. I got 2 points on Cold Fury, because I am within his deployment zone, and I have a Dreadnought within 6 inches of the battlefield, of the middle. Nephilim was successful, so now I have 2 tallies there, which will end up being 8 points. And obviously Psychic Interrogation I can't do anymore because my Librarian is dead. So that was the points for me this turn.
Alright, for movement phase, this is my final movement. So, wolves fell out of combat to stall for another turn, to deny it, maybe, hopefully. My Wolfen left that objective to try to go to the center, because there's no point in them being there anymore, since I've already claimed all my objectives. And Logan Grimnar is moving to attack that tank, since it's the greatest threat to him. Alright, so for the shooting phase, my Long Fangs fired at his Tech Marine, which was out in the open, and I spent 1 CP for Keen Senses because I'd have -1 to shoot at through the center terrain obscuring thingy, and he'd have +1 to a save. So I spent 1 CP to ignore that, and I basically hit him with a bunch of shots, and he failed them. He spent 1 CP to give him a 5-up Feel No Pain, and he wasn't able to undo all the damage since the Tech Marine only had 4 wounds, and it just straight up died. And then Logan Grimnar fired his guns at these intercessors and did nothing. And the Bloodclaws fired their guns at the Venerable Dreadnought in the middle they were fighting and did nothing. Alright, so for the charge phase, Logan Grimnar multi-charges the intercessors and the Gladiator variant, and he makes it in. And then the Wolfen charged the Venerable Dreadnought, and they needed a 6, because -2 for that terrain, and they made it in. Alright, so for my very last turn, my Logan Grimnar swung on the tank, did 8 wounds to it in total. Almost killed it, but he saved 1 of his attacks, which probably would have ended up killing it. And then he did some Feel No Pain saves, which brought it up, and so it survived. Then he swung on the intercessors with his dogs, did 1 wound. Then the Wolfen swung on the Venerable Dreadnought, and I forgot they could reroll to wound, and he basically brought it down to 1 wound left. Then the Venerable Dreadnought swung, killed 3 of my Blood Claws. My Wolfpack leader swung back, didn't do anything. And then he swung everything he had from the tank and the intercessors on Logan. He did 1 wound to him. And then the Blood Claws, the last survivor, passed his leadership test. And that was my last turn. Alright then, I got Controlled 1, Controlled 2, Controlled More. I have another Warrior's Pride for 2 successful charges. And I didn't get anything for Shock Tactics. Raise the Banners, I got 2 points at the beginning. It's looking really good in my favor. Let's see what happens.
Alright, you guys, so for combat here, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, for movement, sorry, not for combat. My intercessors left combat to sit on my home objective. My Redemptor Dreadnought on his home objective got a different angle to better shoot stuff with. My Venerable Dreadnought in the middle left combat to just sit within 6 inches of the middle, and I guess to shoot stuff. And my Macro Plasma Incinerator Dreadnought also technically moved a little bit, but he really just got a little closer, I guess, to other stuff. So, yeah, so that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, it was not super great, but not terrible, I guess. So my Gladiator Valiant was going to put everything into Logan, and he did nothing again. It was kind of a super waste. Then my Venerable Dreadnought shot everything he had into that one guy left from that Blood Claw thing. He killed him. And then the Redemptor with their Macroplasma shot at the Wolfen, and he killed almost all of them. There's 2 left. And then my other Redemptor shot his Stormbolter into the Fenrisian Wolves. Missed everything, so super garbage. And then his Onslaught Gatling Cannons at the Long Fangs, and he killed 2 of them. So, yeah. Alright, you guys, so I charged his Fenrisian Wolves with my Redemptor Dreadnought, he got in, and then I charged his Wolfen with my Venerable Dreadnought, and they got in. Or he got in. And so, yeah, that was it. Alright, you guys, so for combat, we actually realized that the Venerable had fallen back that turn, so he actually couldn't charge. So that whole thing was just negated. But the Redemptor back killed all 4 of the dogs. Which was unsurprising. And then Logan swung, and Logan himself actually didn't do super well. Or, well, I guess my saves were okay. And so the tank actually lived with 2 wounds left, but he had his chariot mount things, which I guess have their own range of attack. Yeah, and then those were actually able to do just enough, exactly 2 damage. Killing the tank, which did not explode, because that would have been too useful. And then, that was it. Alright, so for points, I got my full on primaries. I got 2 points on the mission secondary. I got 4 points on Cold Fury because I had someone in his deployment zone, someone within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. I killed a unit in melee, and I killed a unit in shooting. Nephilim data, those points just came in because I only got the 2 tallies, so that's 8 points. And then Psychic Interrogation obviously stayed at 6 because my librarian died. And so that put the end game total of 82 to 76. And that was it. Yeah.
GG. Alright, so we called it there. Well, the game ended, actually, we didn't call it. And so Space Wolves wins over Iron Hands by only 6 points. If another one of those Nephilims would have gone off and just a little bit more, it would have been a tie, or you would have won. You would have gotten 2 Nephilims off, but... So MVP, LVP, what we're going to do is, it's a bit of a mix for me. So for LVP, I have 2 candidates. So the Wolves, they pretty much failed. They're good for holding objectives as super cheap point holders, but there really was no opportunity for them to go and hit any targets that were good for them. They only had high armor, high damage targets. So they really underperformed. I guess they were just obliterated in shooting because the squads were very large. Only the little squad at the back was actually good throughout the game. But the true loser LVP is Arjak Rockfist. Teleports in, fails a charge, dies. So I was thinking of teleporting him because that's what it looked like it needed to be at the time, but I should have just had him on the field holding the bottom flank where the dreadnoughts were, and he would have wiped. He could have killed a dreadnought. He could have killed 1 and hold off a second. Maybe he could have killed 2 because he has really strong weapons. He has a shooting Thunderhammer swing, and he has Thunderhammer doesn't have like the minus to hit, and he has a 3-up invulnerable save. So he's really powerful and dangerous, but he just absolutely failed. Having a 3-up invulnerable save, failed all his saves. And then to MVP, we have quite a close candidates. We have first is the Venerable Dreadnought, which tanked so many important shots and did some decent damage as well. But he also failed at that Overwatch. Actually, now I think about it, hold on. Murder Fang, MVP, near MVP. Because he survived a lot of shooting right at the end, and he did get some pretty interesting kills, I believe. Well, 1 kill, I think. Okay, so basically the Dreadnoughts were these good bullet sponges. They never got the chance to kill much. I mean, the Murderfang did fail to kill those Intercessors in 1 go, but they were very good bullet sponges. They survived and tanked a lot. Murderfang by luck, but the Venerable Dreadnought endured a lot of firepower. And another close one is the Wolfen with the Thunderhammer and Storm Shields. These guys took so much ranged punishment and survived, and did so many wounds to the vehicle that they charged. Did 15 wounds to it. If their sergeant could have something better, like another Thunderhammer, or if I would have had him die instead, that would have happened. I thought he had a higher leadership, so live and learn. So these guys did incredibly well with Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. It overperformed, and I could have played them better, and they could have done much more damage. Could have succeeded far better. But the true MVP is Logan Grimnar, who took so many Melta's last cannons to the face, killed 2 your heavy tanks and an ironclad dreadnought, slaughtered his way through everything, killed the librarian. He has 4 unit kills, but they're very strong, powerful kills. He did very excellent. He slaughtered everything. He tanked so much, endured so much, and slaughtered so much. So Logan Grimnar on his Storm Rider is MVP for me. So what do you got?
Well, you also got some pretty lucky saves. I had some pretty crappy rolls against him as well, so that didn't help either. Well, so MVPs, there were a couple of units I thought that did pretty well for themselves, but so I think the Redemptors were really the 2 that kind of did the best in the army. The macro plasma one obviously did a lot of shooting, and he was able to take out a lot damage-wise. And then the Gatling one, while I don't think I'll take the Gatling cannon again, he was able to go around, and he cleared 2 separate objectives. So that was also good. And then, yeah, and that was pretty much it. As far as LVPs go, probably these 2 gladiators. I think, depending on their matchup, they would have done okay. But the Gladiator Reaper fighting Space Marines just does not hold very well. It has too low AP, so it can chunk out a bunch of shots, but I don't think it did anything. And then the Valiant, I'm super salty at this one because he had the ability. He had 4 Melta shots, 4 Las Cannon shots, and a rocket pod, but that's not as important. So he had so much damage potential, but I don't think he actually did anything the entire game, including having 2 or 3 rounds of shooting on like Logan Grimnar, the Venerable Dreadnought, the whatever. And so I had some really bad rolls with him, and you had some really good saves. So those invulns really saved, like your Dreadnought and Logan. But I don't think he actually did any damage the whole game. So that was not great.
He did 6 wounds to my Murder Fang.
Oh, was that him? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that was it, though. Which didn't even kill Murder Fang. He ended up having to be killed off by the
Iron Father or Tech Priest, yeah.
one of those 2 guys.
Yeah.
I think he was Tech Marine. I think Iron Father killed the Venerable Dreadnought.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would say for LVPs. I could almost say the Repulsor Executioner as well for an LVP, so basically the tanks. But
the Repulsor Executioner did a lot of damage.
Yeah, so he was able to do a bit. So that's what I would say as far as LVPs and MVPs. So what did you think of your list?
Well, I think Space Wolves have a lot of good close combat ability. These Venerable Dreadnoughts are very strong. Murder Fang is very strong. You could have a very large elite army of Dreadnoughts and stuff. You're very powerful close combat. The Wolfen, especially the ones with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, honestly, they're a bit expensive. That squad of... let's see. I had a full squad of 10, and they cost 295 points. So
yeah, it's a lot. It's actually almost it's 10 points shy of my Repulsor Executioner.
And the regular Wolfen squad was 250 points with the Frost Claws. So that actually was pretty big. So essentially, they're very big, very expensive units, but they're very, very powerful. They did a lot of good damage. I guess as like understanding, I was kind of the impression that the Fenrising rules would be able to do more. They have a lot of interesting buffs, and they could get charges easily, being able to run and charge. But Overall,
Well, they only have one wound with no armor.
yeah,
and
so
toughness
like
4.
they're fast attacks. So what I'm looking at is that a 35-point unit that just sits back and holds on an objective. So
Yeah.
that's pretty good. That's what they're best at.
That, yeah.
As far as the rest, overall note some constant things. Grav cannons with with Devastator Squad's Firstborn is still good. Grav cannons are very good, very useful. The Dreadnoughts are very strong. They have very strong close combat. The true thing though was the Blood Claws. I didn't really get to test them that much. I mean, they did some good wounds, but they only got one round in because they were getting shot up. So it's a bit hard to really manage this. Maybe, as far as I can understand, Dreadnoughts with Space Wolves, Logan Grimnar, bunch of Dreadnoughts. Arjak can be in there. That 3-up invulnerable save. And he's just a really powerful character, but he has to be played a bit better. I thought he would do better because he's a 3-up invulnerable save.
Well, it takes a couple bad rolls for that, especially since he was being shot at by the Valiant with the Meltas and all the D6 damage.
Logan had a worse save and he survived easy.
Well, again, you had some pretty good rolls and I had some really bad ones.
Yeah, so what I'm basically getting is that Space Wolves are a different type of close combat army that can use more vehicles, some heavy hitting the Wolfen. This is basically what I'm seeing, is that they're a very strong infantry and vehicle melee army. And so if I were to go again...
You didn't even take their wolf guys, the ones on the actual wolves.
Yeah. So, yeah, I could have taken them. They have a lot of good stuff. So basically, fast, hard-hitting melee in infantry. So, similar to Blood Angels, but they're jetpack. So what do you think of the Iron Hands?
I actually really liked it, but I definitely played it wrong. I've never really done super well with the Tech Marines, especially since their heal range is 3 inches. So instead of kind of splitting up my tanks, I probably should have done like a Dreadnought castle and then like a tank castle. Because they had a lot of firepower, but they had no buffs. They didn't really have anything going for them, so I should have split my 2 Tech Marines and then had the Librarian kind of run around as a little more supplemental. That's probably what I should have done, and then had a set of tanks on one side, set of the Dreadnoughts on the other, and then the floating Dreadnought and maybe Librarian, I guess. Is probably how I should have played, because the Dreadnoughts up top, all 3 of them survived. Now granted, most of your heavy hitting was on the other side, except for Arjak, but he failed that charge, and that was basically his death sentence. Which I've done. I mean, I've had those kind of turns as well. So this game didn't go super well for me, but I had some pretty bad rolls. I didn't have any buffs with those tanks, like any kind of re-rolls or anything. And so that kind of shot me in the foot. And then I had the Ironclad Dreadnought probably a little too far forward. And so that's how he was able to get charged, and then I failed all of his saves and all of his feel no pains, and he just took that to the face. And then the tank that was down there was the Reaper, which had no AP, just a whole bunch of shots, single damage shots, and I was like, well, that's not great. But of course we flip-flopped. Your strength was put at the top, mine was at the bottom, and so we literally just rotated around the map, essentially. We switched sides and everything. I ended up over here, and then you ended up over here, and so... but I like the list. I would probably take the Repulsor Executioner again, and the Valiant. I don't know if I would take the Reaper. I might get a different Dreadnought. I know a popular Iron Hands Dreadnought is a Relic Contemptor Dreadnought, but it's a Forge World unit, and I don't really want to take Forge World units. I like the eventually maybe we'll move into Forge World stuff, but yeah, no, so I do like the Iron Hands. They definitely are a vehicle, like a Dreadnought tank kind of vehicle list. There are probably some stronger, some infantry you could probably take, but I just took intercessors to just kind of help camp out on stuff. But I did like them. They have some interesting buffs and stratagems for vehicles, like turning a Dreadnought into a character. I thought that was pretty cool. And then being able to give him command traits and all of that stuff. And then they have some really interesting stratagems. I didn't really actually get a chance to use a lot of them, but a lot of them are based off of vehicles. So, I actually do like the Iron Hands. I think I need to just play that because I usually play a lot more infantryless, so working with a lot less vehicles, a lot less units and in vehicles was just it's kind of a weird dynamic. Yeah. So, but it was fun. I did enjoy the Iron Hands. But again, I don't know, like the buff units like Tech Marines and the Librarian playing as a buff. I've never really done well with them. So usually it's just characters that just run up and punch stuff that I say do well at, but it's hard to do wrong at with those. But yeah, so I liked Iron Hands. I would definitely play them again. Probably will at some point. I just would probably play it a little differently, or maybe even start a little farther back. Because it's hard with the objectives part of it. You want to kind of move up and take objectives and start getting points, but at the same time, if you're a shooty army, it's like, how many points can I afford to not get, And then if I don't go up the table, how much, like, how off-footed is that making me? And,
All right.
So it was weird, for sure.
All right then. Well, GG's and GG's. Was an interesting game.